Hey there, everyone, and welcome back. This is the third video in my three-part series on radios and getting your ham radio technician license. If you haven't watched the first two videos, the links of those will be down below, or they're in this playlist as well. In the first video, what I did was went over what you can expect out of ham radio, what it's going to be able to do for you as far as with your preparedness planning and all of that. And I also went through some of the different ranges that you can expect from some of these other radio services. In the next video, the second video I went into a little bit more detail about the different radio services like the GMRS, the MURS, the FRS, and ham radio as well, and let you know kind of what to expect out of those, whether they require a license or not, whether you can use repeaters, all of that different stuff. One thing I forgot to mention in that video was that with GMRS, it does require a license, but I forgot to mention that there is no test involved with that. You can get, all you have to do is pay for the license basically, and your entire family is covered with GMRS. So in this video, what I want to do is go through what it's going to take to get your ham radio license. Now, there are a lot of hoops to jump through to get your ham radio license, but it's not nearly as complicated as you would think, but it's not as easy as the other services either. But with ham radio, you have a lot more options of different things that you can do than you do with these other ones. So that's why it's a really popular option in the preparedness community. So first off, let's get into the questions and studying for your test. With the questions, there's going to be 35 questions selected from a pool of 426, and a minimum score of 26 out of 35 is required to pass. The questions contain 4 schematic diagrams like the one you see on the top left up there. And they're divided up into different groups, 10 different groups, T1 through T0 or T10, basically. And the reason for this is these are different groups, whether you're talking about electronics, you're talking about schematics, you're talking about antennas. They categorize these. That way, if you're falling short, if you're having problems with one subject, say, the antennas part of it is really giving you trouble, you can go to that category and just study up on antennas themselves rather than trying to figure out where each question is. So they make it pretty easy for you. Another thing with this is they're all multiple choice questions and there's no trick answers. So basically the way you practice it is the way it's going to be written on the test. You're going to see exactly the same thing. They're not going to try to trick you. It is what it is. So as you study this stuff on these different websites that I'll go through here in a second, it's all going to be the same thing you're going to see when you take that test. Now with that, try not to memorize the answers because like I said, it's 35 questions selected from a pool of 426. So unless you've got a really good memory and you can memorize all 426 answers, it's going to be pretty tough. And with the test, you don't know which 35 questions are going to be taken and put on the actual test. So try not to memorize that. And I've got a little bit more about this in later on because there is a little bit of memorization that needs to be done. But as far as memorizing everything in order, don't do that because it's just going to cause you a whole lot of problems. So next here, what I want to do is go over some of the websites I use. There's a bunch of different places out there. So this is only 4 different things, but there's a bunch out there. These are the ones that I use though to get my technician license. First off, the ARRL website is a great website, and if you end up getting into ham, you'll find yourself going to that website quite a bit. It's a lot of general information, but they have links and they can direct you in the right place for a number of different questions you might have. So it's one of those really great websites. QRZ.com is one I used quite a bit as well. They've got it's another website that's got a lot of general information, as well as a bunch of other information. Hamstudy.org is a practice test that I use quite a bit. And what I liked about Hamstudy was that it gave you a kind of a running total. If you logged into the website, it gives you a running total about how you're doing with your practice tests. If you're getting better, it shows you kind of the graph of, hey, you're improving. If you're getting worse, it's going to show you that. And it also shows you the different segments that T1 through T10 I was talking about. Some of them that you're not doing so well in, so you can just practice those sections themselves. Ham Test Online is another good one. I've never tried this because it's a paid one, and I did all of my stuff basically for free, other than an app I paid like $2 for. But I've heard great things about this. So if you want something that's kind of all-inclusive, it's got everything you need in one spot, I've heard that is definitely something to think about. One other thing that I did is I used an app on my phone, and I don't remember what the app was, but it was like $2. There's a bunch of them out there. But what I did with that is that enabled me to practice just about anywhere I was. If I was at the DMV waiting, I'd pull out my phone and practice. At the doctor's office, dentist office, pull out my phone and practice. Even during commercial breaks, any chance that I had, I was pulling that phone out and practicing. And over the course of a week or two, I gave myself about 2 weeks, I was gradually getting better and better to the point where I was at that 95 and up, anywhere in the 90s. I was doing pretty well on the practice test, and I figured I was doing well enough I could actually go schedule a test and take that. So with that, I want to talk about next how to actually get that done. Like I said, the ARRL website's got a lot of general information, and what it has on there is you can search for classes in your area. And basically, like on the left here, what you do is you just put in your information. You don't have to fill out everything. You can, I believe that even if you just put your zip code in, that would work. And it will give you a list, like what's on the left up there, of different places in your area that are giving tests and when they're doing it. And you can click the get more information button as well. A lot of these are done at libraries, firehouses, so it's pretty relaxed. Basically, I took mine at a firehouse, and it's basically a room with a bunch of computers set up and everybody sitting there taking their tests. So pretty relaxed, pretty easy. What they want you to bring is your photo ID or 2 alternative forms of ID, and of course, the $15 to take the test. 2 alternative forms of ID could be your military ID, passport, birth certificate, social security card. They just want to make sure you are who you are. They make it really easy to pass the test, but at the same time, they've got to make sure that everything is by the book and all of that. Give yourself plenty of time, but not too much. And this is what I was talking about with memorization. You don't want, if you're like me, that you learn all of this information, and over time, all of that stuff just kind of seeps out of your head. So you don't want to practice all this stuff, be scoring really good, and then give yourself a month and then go take the test, and all of a sudden you're in the 70%. So make sure and schedule your test as that information is fresh in your head. What I did, mine was a week out. That was the closest one I could get. So I scheduled the test, and during that week, I just made sure and took the practice tests every once in a while, made sure that stuff was fresh in my mind. So what happens if you do fail the test, though, even if you've prepared and done all the stuff right? They are supposed to charge you another $15 to retake the test, and you can retake the test that same day. Although I will say some places and some people, and I'm not going to say all of them, but they will allow you to just go ahead and take that test. Now, with that being said, if you fail miserably, they're probably going to tell you, hey, you need to go home, study a little bit more, and then maybe come back for the next scheduled class and see if you can do a little bit better then. But if you're real close, they're going to let you go ahead and take that test again. Some may charge you the other $15, but they're going to let you take the test again. Also, a lot of places too will actually let you, if you pass your technician class license, they will let you try to take your general class for free. I tried that and didn't do so hot. I think I got like 60% because it's just a lot of different questions and I didn't study them. But it's one of those things that, hey, you know what? If you happen to pass it, great, your general class. But if you don't lose anything of it. So let's cover what happens when you pass, and then we'll get into some of the equipment and stuff. When you pass your test, what they do is they submit everything, and then on the ARRL website, you can check your call sign. They'll give you what your call sign is, and you can check on that website, and if it shows up, you're good to go. You're ready to broadcast and all that. They'll also send you a paper copy of your certificate, but you don't have to wait for that to start broadcasting. Once you're on the database, you're good to go. You can start doing stuff. What I did was, after about 3 or 4 days, I was checking it every day, sometimes twice a day, to see if my call sign was on there. What you do is you put in your call sign, and if you're on there, it'll show your information. If you're not, it'll come back with no search results. So pretty easy to do. But like I said, you don't have to actually wait for the paper copy to come. Once you're online, you are good to go. So with that, after I took my test, I want to go through some of the equipment and all of that. So basically, taking your test is real easy. You study like we just talked about, and then you get your equipment. And what we hear about all the time is the Baofeng radios, and that's actually what I started out with too. They are low cost. They do exactly what you're going to need them to do, and in the beginning, and even after that. I still have one in my bug out bag. They do what they do. As you go through this, though, as you get more into ham radio, you're going to have to make some changes, and that's what I want to go through here in a bit as well. So what I started out with was the basic everything you hear on all these prepper websites, right? You get your Baofeng radio. I got one thing I did change, though, was the initial antenna was not all that great, so I ended up getting a Nagoya antenna from the advice of a friend, Jake. Told me to grab one of those. I think it was about $15. Just a much better antenna. And I'll leave the links to everything, all the equipment and supplies I'm talking about in this video below, so you can check that out there. I also got an external mic. Some of the little kits and packages you can get include the mic with it. You may even be able to get one with the antenna like that. It just depends. And these radios range from 15 to 25, 35, depending on the package and all of that. But my problem with this arose when I got my license. It was a bit frustrating because, as I said in one of the earlier videos, I live in kind of a bowl. So it's hard for me to get my signal out with this small antenna like that. So unless somebody was driving by my house within range, I didn't get anything. And it was pretty frustrating because I just spent all this time and energy getting my ham radio license, and then I couldn't do anything with it. So I had to figure out, and I spent quite a bit of time figuring out what the heck I was going to do. So what I ended up doing was upgrading a little bit of some of my things. And what I did initially was get myself an antenna, because that was my problem, was getting my signal out there. It wasn't the Baofeng radio. It was actually getting my signal out there. So what I did was I got this Tram 1480 dual band base antenna and some RG8 cable, which the cable is basically like coax cable, but on steroids. It's some big stuff. And I was able to use this even with my Baofeng radio, not with the mobile rig that I have next to there, which I'll go into in a minute. But I was able to, with an adapter, I was able to take that RG8 cable and plug it into the same port that the other antenna plugged into on my Baofeng radio. So, and it worked great. I was able to hit repeaters that were in my area. I was able to get more reception and all of that stuff, actually hear other people talking, and they were actually able to hear me. So it was a good thing, but I wanted a little bit more power. These Baofeng radios are 5 watts, and I wanted something a little better. So I ended up getting this Yaesu FT7900, which is a great little radio. And with this, because it's a mobile rig, I had to get a power supply as well. Now, my plans for this are eventually in my home, I'm going to get an HF rig. But for now, I think that what I wanted to do was get something that I could use inside now. And then when I got that HF rig, I can take this Yaesu and put it in my truck and use it as my mobile rig. So, but for now, what I had to do was get the power supply, because there's no battery to hook it up to. The power supply was, I think, a little bit less than $100. The Yaesu was about $250, I think. So not outrageous, but definitely more expensive than the initial radio setup. Now, a little bit on these bands and what you're going to be able to do with your ham radio initially. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail and try to confuse you with all of this stuff, or explain the differences between the frequencies and the bands and what you have access to and what you don't. The main thing when you first get your technician license, and if you have that Baofeng radio or even my Yaesu radio, is those are dual band radios, meaning the two bands that you need to focus on are the 2 meters and the 70 centimeters. All of the other ones, initially anyway, don't mean a whole lot. It's good to learn about those and figure that stuff out, but initially the two main ones you're going to have to worry about are 2 meters and 70 centimeters. Now, that doesn't apply to the test itself. The test itself is going to have some questions about these other bands too, but when you're working your radio, just know that if you have your dual band radio, your Baofeng or Yaesu or whatever, it's going to be 2 meters or 70 centimeters. And those are the two bands that you're going to be able to use. Those are pretty popular. There's going to be a lot of traffic on there. So those are the ones that a lot of people use quite a bit anyway. It's as you progress in ham radio, that's when you start getting into the other bands and the other radio types and all of that. One last thing before we get out of here with the antennas. For each radio, for each band, you're going to need the correct antenna and the correct equipment. So like with my antenna, that is a dual band antenna. There's going to be some bands that you need different types of antennas. You see this bottom picture here with this guy's got all sorts of different antennas. I actually have a neighbor or somebody that lives close by me that has a setup that looks pretty similar to that. That's somebody that's into it pretty far. So initially, when we're first getting our ham radio license, we're not gonna be like that. I don't know that my wife would let me get like that anyway, but that's how far you can actually go with this. But initially, what you want to do is just worry about those two, the 2 meters and 70 centimeters, learn, practice, and then figure out where you want to go from there. So that's it for, this 3 video series. My point with this video series was to give you that complete picture of radio and preparedness. A lot of people everywhere you read basically on the internet when you're looking for best, shortwave radios for preppers is they all talk about ham radio. And for good reason. There's just so much more you can do with ham radio than you can with these other radio services that it really is just head and shoulders above all the other stuff. But that all depends on how much you're willing to put into it, what you can put into it, the money you can put into it, the time, all of that different stuff. Because ham radio definitely has a learning curve. You get into it and you can do the basic stuff, but it's one of those lifelong learning processes that you get into. So my whole point with this whole video series was to give you an idea about some of these other radio services, an idea about what it's going to take to get into ham radio, and help you make a better decision about it before you actually go through the process of taking the ham test and then deciding that is just too much, or you didn't know you could do this with other radio services. So that was the whole point of this, to give you an idea about what these other radio services can do and help you make a more educated decision. This is basically the information that I wish I had when I was making my decision to get into ham radio. I would have still made the same decision, but it's a lot of the questions I had about what are these different radio types and what do they do, and is it worth the time and energy and all that. So with that, that's it for this video series. If you do have any questions or comments, I know all this stuff was pretty basic, but if you do have any questions or comments, let me know. I can answer you, or I can get you in touch with somebody who can answer you, and we can figure all of that stuff out. But anyway, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure and subscribe, and we will talk to you everyone later.